A beautiful woman was attacked by a mysterious person because she had coffee with a private detective. Under duress, Apricot had no choice but to reveal the contents of her conversation with the detective. However, it seemed that these were not the details the mysterious person wanted to hear. He cut Apricot's skin and then slowly inserted the knife into her chest. Just at this critical moment, Detective Hazama arrived at the dark room. Unable to see clearly, Hazama slowly turned on the lights. It was then that Tony forcefully pushed Apricot aside. Hazama, now realizing the situation, started shooting rapidly, but all his bullets were blocked by Tony's mechanical arm, which had been transformed into a weapon. Hazama's ammunition was depleted, and he could only defend himself passively. In an instant, he was severely injured all over his body. Tony didn't give him a chance to react and swiftly stabbed him. In a moment of desperation, Hazama summoned his last bit of strength and pushed Tony out the window. Shortly after, the police arrived, but Tony had already vanished without a trace. Apricot and Hazama were rushed to the hospital. It turned out that Hazama was originally a private detective who had been commissioned by Dr. Tucker to locate a person named Eddie. This person stole the research data on the cybernetic being that the doctor had been working on. And there have been numerous incidents of cybernetic beings going rogue recently. It appeared that Eddie had begun to misuse this technology. Hazama went to the company where Eddie was located, but the chairman seemed unwilling to disclose any information about him. He had no choice but to start with the secretary, Apricot, unknowingly putting both of them in grave danger. Fortunately, Apricot was not seriously harmed and soon regained consciousness. She eagerly inquired about Hazama's updates, but the police chief made up some excuses to evade her questions. In reality, Hazama was in critical condition and had been kept in the intensive care unit. To save him, the doctor had transformed him into a cybernetic being. A few days later, Apricot visited Hazama's home and found no one answering the door. Just as she was about to leave, a child opened the door. It turned out that he was just staying temporarily at Hazama's place, and Sam had no idea where he had gone. At that moment, a firefight suddenly broke out outside. Both sides are cybernetic being. Apricot and the others were caught in a passive situation. Suddenly, a figure appeared on the street. Hazama, who had been modified. In no time, he annihilated all the cybernetic beings. A long-haired man tried to threaten Hazama using a woman, but these low-level cybernetic beings were no match for him. Hazama quickly broke his mechanical arm. Apricot seemed to recognize him and kept calling his name, but Hazama understood the importance of keeping his identity hidden. Therefore, he left without turning back, to avoid arousing Apricot's suspicion. After a while, Hazama drove to the scene. However, this did not dispel Apricot's doubts. Surprisingly, she directly got into Hazama's car. Apricot became a target because of her connection with Hazama, so it was his responsibility to protect her. Helpless, Hazama drove away with her since it was still relatively safe to have him by her side. Later, the two of them arrived at a suspension bridge. Hazama explained the whole story to Apricot. Originally, Dr. Tucker's research was intended for medical purposes, but the technology wasn't mature yet. Cybernetic beings required special medication to maintain stability, or else they would go into a state of chaos. Apricot's company happened to produce this medication. Hazama didn't want her to get involved, but Apricot insisted on investigating together. Reluctantly, Hazama agreed. The next day, Hazama returned home from work as usual. Just as he opened the door, he heard the sound of a bomb fuse. People downstairs heard the explosion and left satisfied. Unaware that Hazama was watching them, Hazama quickly chased after them. His body had been enhanced and equipped with state-of-the-art electronic devices by Dr. Tucker. He soon caught up with their car. However, the two individuals inside were not ordinary people either. They had also undergone enhancements, with weapons integrated into their bodies, but they were still no match for Hazama. These attackers who targeted Hazama were all modified by Eddie, the one who stole Dr. Tucker's research. Due to the technology's immaturity, many cybernetic beings went out of control. During a highly anticipated ball game, the players suddenly went berserk after the match and started attacking the audience in the stands. Hazama immediately transformed and began dealing with the out-of-control cybernetic beings. They had completely lost their sanity. During the battle, blood splattered on Hazama's face, triggering a painful memory. The anger within him turned him into a ruthless force. At that crucial moment, Apricot stepped in front of him. However, Hazama had lost control. With one hand, he lifted her high into the air. Moments later, Hazama slowly regained consciousness. Looking at the carnage before him, unable to believe that he was responsible for it, in a state of shock, he quickly sought out Dr. Tucker. Hazama couldn't understand why he experienced loss of control even after using the medication. It turned out that the mechanical body also had a control system, but Hazama's anger had shattered that barrier, causing him to lose control. Once everything was settled, Hazama returned home. Apricot had been waiting for him for a while. Initially, she believed Hazama was 8-man, but today's events left her in disbelief. Hazama was about to say something when Sam interrupted them. He returned with his injured father, who turned out to be a cybernetic being. To prevent him from going berserk again, Hazama had to restrain him by binding his hands and feet to the bed. Hazama had finally uncovered the mastermind behind the events. Harlan, the CEO of Apricot Corporation. Harlan had plans to rule the city using electronic cybernetic beings. He had enlisted his subordinate, Tony, who had ambitions to replace Harlan. Tony had secretly administered a special drug to the team members, causing the accidents on the field. However, Tony didn't kill Harlan. Instead, he used him as a scapegoat to suppress the incidents of rampaging cybernetic beings during the matches. Tony reported Harlan to the police. Unfortunately, when the police arrived, Harlan had already transformed into a cybernetic being himself. A fierce battle ensued between Harlan and the police, who were no match for his enhanced abilities. Just as the situation reached a critical point, Hazama arrived on the scene. He discovered that Harlan had a timed bomb attached to him and had to subdue him quickly. However, in the next moment, the bomb on Harlan detonated. Meanwhile, Tony, who wanted to break free from his reliance on the drug, forced Eddie to reveal a solution. Eddie reluctantly disclosed that they needed to acquire Dr. Tucker's creation, the mechanical body of 8-man. By transferring Tony's consciousness into the body, he could rid himself of the drug's dependency. Intrigued by the idea, Tony agreed. Back at their base, Tony's henchmen captured Apricot to use her as leverage against Hazama. Alone, Hazama arrived at the designated location, unaware that Tony's men had been lying in wait. They quickly subdued Hazama, and Tony threatened him by holding Apricot hostage. Despite the dire situation, Hazama had no choice but to transform into 8-man. This move caught Tony off guard, but it was also what he had secretly hoped for, as it spared him the effort of searching for 8-man. However, Tony had underestimated 8-man's power. Even when they attacked together, they couldn't defeat him. Using the distraction, Tony seized the opportunity to take Apricot onto a train. Hazama couldn't intervene easily and had to let Tony escape. Suddenly, the train derailed, but the explosion alone couldn't harm Tony. Taking Apricot, Tony fled into a tunnel where he had set up traps in advance. Hazama lost consciousness due to a powerful electric current and lost control over 8-man. Tony brought 8-man before Eddie. Now, all they needed to do was erase Hazama's consciousness so that Tony could take over the mechanical body. Just as Tony was about to delete Hazama's consciousness, injured O'Connor arrived. He blamed Eddie for destroying his happy life. However, O'Connor's basic mechanical body wasn't a match for Tony. He was forced in front of the control console, and Eddie reminded Tony not to damage the computer. Seizing the opportunity, O'Connor fought back, lifting Tony and smashing him into Eddie's control console. Eddie lost consciousness entirely, and the entire laboratory began to collapse. Taking advantage of the chaos, O'Connor tried to awaken Hazama. Tony regained his senses and shot back at O'Connor. He shielded Hazama from the bullets and injected him with a new power source. So he put the two men aside. He took on Tony himself. Facing Tony's bullets, he had to dodge back and forth, looking for a chance to get in close. Luckily, everyone was safe. Hazama left with the two men.